explain what is language and sex. First of all is the background. Sociolinguistic places the position of language in relation to the use of the language in society. So there is view language as a social system and communication system. The use of language is a form of social interaction that occurs in concrete situations. Thus language is not only as an individual system, but also as a social phenomenon. As a social phenomenon, language and language use are not only determined by linguistic factors, but also influenced by social and situation. Social factors, for example, social status for education level, age, economic level, gender. Situational factor, for example, who is speaking, in what language to whom, when, where, and on what problem. In society, there is often confusion and misunderstanding of the terms of gender and gender. The two terms actually have different meanings. Nugroho from 2008 argues that gender is the differentiation of the role of woman and man, where what form is a social and cultural construction. So, it is not because of a construction that is carried from birth. If gender is something that is carried from birth, then gender is something that is formed because of an understanding that grows and develops in society. Language is a science system that contains gender-different terms, concepts, and labels. Language also greatly influences our perception and perspective on things. The language is communication, but language is a means of socializing and perceiving an attitude or value. Even language affects the physical movement of human voices. Through the suggestion given by certain words will have hidden strengths that are useful for perceiving value in society and encouraging people to take social action based on beliefs through language. How is the relationship between language and gender in sociolinguistic studies? Long before linguistics have focused on the role language played in the position of women in society, they had studied and are still studying the presence of lexical, phonological, and morphological forms that are used only or predominantly by speakers of one sex or the other. Now, linguists are interested in sociolinguistic variation. Men's and women's speech is investigated along with social status, style, age, and ethnicity. Studies of linguistic variation relate to some Arab, American, and British communities reveal the fact that women are more conservative than men in their tendency to standard linguistic forms. Women are sensitive to linguistic variants that are socially stigmatized. Therefore, they constantly produce forms which approach those of the standard language, and because women are socially insecure, they are more status conscious than men are in the equivalent social roles. It follows from this that women tend more than men to use the form of language that carry higher status connotation. What is gender language? An example. Another example of gender language is the way the title Mr., Miss, and Ms. are used. Mr. can refer to any man, regardless of whether he is single or married. But Miss and Ms. define women by whether they are married, which until quite recently men defining them by their relationship with men. Why is gender fair language important? Gender fair language minimizes unnecessary concern about gender in your subject matter, allowing both you and your reader to focus on what people do rather than on which sex they happen to be. For example, the practice of using the and man as generic terms poses common problem. Who is a gender-neutral person? People whose gender is not male or female use many different terms to describe themselves, with non-binary being one of the most common. Other terms include genderqueer, gender, bigender, and more. Gender difference cause difference in language production. Let's understand language difference by certain gender.
Hello, in my part, I will explain about male-female difference. The first, difference in man and woman speech. The issue of women interacting differently from men has been discussed for hundreds of years. However, feminist movement in the 1960s released that language was one of the instruments of female oppression by males. A lot of works, for instance, describe mostly the speech of men. On the other hand, dress. In an experiment on gender identity in conversation, they found that men speak more than women. Next is women break the rules of turn-taking less than men. Studies in the area of language and gender often make use of two models or paradigms, that of dominance and that of difference. Dominance can be attributed to the fact and in the mixed sex conversation, men are more likely to interrupt than women. The difference theory was also summarized in Tannen books, You Just Don't Understand, in an article which she represents male and female language issues in a series of 6 contrasts. Status vs support. This claim that men grow up in the world in which conversation is competitive. They seek to achieve the upper hand or to prevent others from dominating them. For women, however, taking is often a way to gain confirmation and support for their ideas. Men see the world as a place where they try to gain status and keep it. Women see the world as a network connecting, seeking support and consensus. Next is independence vs intimacy. In general, women often think in terms of the consciousness and support, and struggle to preserve intimacy. Men concerned with status tend to focus more on the independence. Thus, traits can lead women and men starkly different view of the same subject. Advice vs understanding. Deborah Tannen claims that too many men's complaint is a challenge to find a solution.
Honey, I'm not feeling well. It looks like I have a fever. Oh my god. Let's go to the doctor to check your condition. Come on.
Information vs feelings. Culturally and historically speaking, men's concerns were seen as more important than those of women, but today this situation may be reserved so that the giving of information and brevity of speech are considered of less value than sharing of emotion and elaboration. 5. Order vs proposals. It is claims that women often suggest that people do things in indirect ways. Why don't we? Or would it be good if we? Men may use and prefer to hear a direct imperative. 6. Conflict vs. Clearly observed in work situation where a management decision seems unattractively, men will often resist it vocally, while women may appear to accuse but complain subsequently. In fact, this is a broad generalization, and for every one of the broad and opposites, we will know of men and women who are expression on norm. Women use more standard form than men. In the literature, Tradwell found a kind of differentiation for speakers of urban British English. His study demonstrates that women influence use form associated with the percentage standard more frequently than men. His study also discovered that male speakers place a high value on working class, non-standard speech. He offered several possible reasons for the finding that women are more likely use form considered correct. The first, the subordinate position of women in English and American associate makes it more necessary of women to secure their social status linguistically. And while men can be related to social what they do, women may be related primarily on the appear to their speech is more important, as for American literature research has not shown the noticeable difference in terms of the usage standard for in men and women. Women's speech is less direct or assertive than men's. In 1975, Robin Lacklow published an account of women's language in her book entitled Language and Women's Place. In another article, she published a set basic assumption about the marks of language of women. Among them, she made the claim that women catch using phrase like sort of, kind of, it seems like, and so on. Use take question. Omar and Atkins conclude that the quote speech pattern were neither characteristic of all women or limited only to women. Therefore, to women who use the lowest frequency of woman language that has an usually high standard.
Here's some possible explanation. The same thing can happen in communication between the sex. Men and women carry on the conversation patterns they learn from interaction with same-sex primates during childhood. This difference can lead to conflict and misunderstanding when they are in the heterosexual conversation situation they are just entering. Gender and language. It's not a myth that gender influence language. It's not just because men and women are naturally different kinds of things. There are two things that are considered to have contributed to the formation of this difference, namely, first, the problem of social relations. Friendship and similar play habits in childhood and then continue into adult friendship will give birth to groups of men and women who have their own subculture. For example, boys are prohibited from playing with flowers because flowers symbolize something soft and soft is a girl. On the other hand, women are prohibited from wearing trousers, playing football, swordsmanship, and games that prioritize sexuality because this game belongs to boys, and if a girl continues to play, she will be called a tomboy woman. The relationship between language and gender categorized in three kinds of relationship according to Bradle and John is 1. Language reflects gender division. 2. Language creates a gender division. 3. Language and social structure influence each other. Language and sex in different cultures. Regarding the relationship between language and gender is never separated from cultural factor because they are factors that cause the division of role based on sex because the language contains concepts, terms, and symbols that indicate appropriate behavior for men and women. Gender, on the other hand, is a social property, something that is acquired or will through your relationship with other people through individual obedience to certain cultural norms and prohibition. Gender is the difference and function of social roles constructed by society as well as the responsibilities of men and women. Gender is related to the process of living how men and women should act and act in accordance with the structural values, social and cultural conditions in which they are located. The scope of roles occupied by men and women across cultures is very wide. What is considered natural behavior for each sex is based more on cultural beliefs than on biological needs. Culture's trick to counter traits is analogous to ethnic groupings based on this approach. Gender segregation during childhood and adolescence results in difference in purpose and style of conversation. The trick of domination of power, the proposition of domination of power will serve as a means of changing their own interpreted position in patriarchal society. The position of women who want people influence women to be polite. Traits of cultural difference. This cultural difference approach basically adapts Gambers Fromberg in his study of interethnic communication. Members of different cultural groups will bring their own presupposition, their own rules of communication, and apply them in the face of intercultural communication to understand the meaning of interaction during communication. English as sexy language. English has she pronouns for girls and he for boys. The dominance of men over women in British society is reflected in common terms that use the word male, for example, chairman and spokesman. And the awareness of equal rights between men and women emerged in the English-speaking community
there will also be a different awareness in language. For example, the use of the word of he or she to avoid excessive use of he and changing masculine terms such as a chairman and spokesperson into more neutral words such as chairperson and spokesperson. Adult men in English only get one title namely Mr., while women have three choices: Miss, Mrs., and Miss. Women seem to have a clear identity. When she was a girl, her greeting was Miss. When married, used Mrs., and to obscure was used by Miss. This is the big difference for a man, whether he is married or there is only one title of existence, Mr. The treatment of the language system like this is clearly the domination of men over women. Misgreeting actually appears rather to obscure the status of women. However, it is getting worse. It actually adds to the confusion of women towards. There's three choices. In other words, there is a need for women to show their status clearly. The meaning of feminine narrowing is a word that differs to a woman, with a narrow meaning that has a male perspective, while a word that has the function of regarding woman is a word that when used will have a negative meaning. Example: male, lord, lady. Lord and lady are basically two words that would denote of respectable status in society. Harmony defines lord as supreme male rule, even if it is at with the written in capital it means your majesty, while lady means woman belonging to upper class. However, the two words are not always parallel. The word lord always has a positive connotation. Meanwhile, the word lady is not always, like calling it lady's maid. To call it is, to call a male servant is never called the lord maid. Another term that has a negative connotation towards woman is mistress. If men are masters, in the sentence, he is my master means dia adalah tuan saya. But if it says she is my mistress, means dia adalah selingkuhan saya. It is impossible if a woman says he is my master, it means dia adalah pacar tuan saya.
So, this is our video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget